This country, it's always been the same.
Silas Vane, Duke of Ashbourne, decided before breakfast that he would end the engagement. Not postpone it, not soften it, end it. He waited in the stable yard, gloves folded carefully in his hands, while Lady Honoria Wickham mounted her horse. Her movements were flawless, practiced, elegant, performed as though someone were always watching. When she saw him, she smiled. It was the smile she used in public. They rode out together without comment, because that was what was expected of them. The path through the estate woods was narrow, shaded, familiar. Hooves struck damp earth in steady rhythm. Silas kept his eyes ahead, his posture correct, his pace controlled. Honoria matched him exactly. She always did. He adjusted his reins. She did the same. He slowed slightly. She did not. "You are unusually silent today," she said lightly, as if remarking on the weather. "One might think you were rehearsing something." His jaw tightened. "There is something we must discuss," he said. "Privately, when we return." The air shifted. Honoria did not look at him. She looked ahead. Her hand slid along the reins, not in alarm, not in hesitation, but with decision. The horse beneath her tossed its head. To anyone watching from a distance, it would have appeared unremarkable. A startled animal, a sudden imbalance, a cry. Silas saw the truth. She loosened her grip. She leaned back instead of forward. She released the reins. She did not try to save herself. Honoria fell. Silas was on the ground beside her almost instantly, mud soaking his knees as he reached for her shoulders. She lay perfectly still. "My legs," she whispered. "Silas, I cannot feel my legs." The sentence settled between them, final and precise. Around them, the woods remained unchanged. Birds stirred. The horses snorted and stamped. Nothing else moved. The words he had prepared, the careful ones, the honest ones, never left his mouth. What Silas did not yet understand was that the decision he had made before breakfast no longer belonged to him. The engagement did not end. It closed. The household would not learn the truth for weeks, and when they did, they would believe the story exactly as it was meant to be believed. What no one would see, what no one would suspect, was that Lady Honoria Wickham had just secured her future with a single, irreversible choice, and that the person who would suffer most from it had not yet entered the story at all. 3 days later, Ashbourne Hall was sealed against the light. The curtains in the drawing room remained drawn, though the afternoon sun pressed insistently against the fabric. Beeswax candles burned low despite the hour. Lilies crowded every surface. Silas stood at the fireplace, his back to the room, gloves forgotten on the mantel. The grate was cold. He stared into it anyway. "The doctor is quite clear, Your Grace." He turned. Lady Wickham sat rigid on the brocade sofa, her spine straight, her mouth thin. The handkerchief in her hand was dry, folded too neatly. "Spinal shock," she said. "He says it is a mercy she survived the fall." She rose and crossed the room. "But she does not move her legs." Silas said nothing. "My daughter rode out because you wished it," Lady Wickham continued. "She told me you were distant, that she thought fresh air might ease your mind." Her eyes held his. "You were the last person with her before she fell." Silas's jaw tightened. "We will bring in other physicians," he said. "London, Vienna, wherever necessary." Lady Wickham laughed once, sharp, incredulous. "Specialists?" She shook her head. "You think this is a fever?" She stopped directly in front of him. "She will never walk." The words settled between them. Silas did not contradict her. Upstairs, the heavy oak door closed. Honoria waited 3 breaths. Then she moved. She flung the duvet aside and swung her legs over the edge of the bed. She rolled her ankles slowly, deliberately, working the stiffness from her calves. She stretched until the ache eased, until blood warmed muscle and bone. Perfect. She lay back just as footsteps sounded in the corridor. The duvet came up. Her legs fell into place. Wrong. Careless. lifeless, her head tilted, her breath shallowed. When the door opened, the room smelled of lavender and damp linen. Silas stopped just inside the threshold. "Silas," she whispered. He crossed the room. "Mother says—" Her voice faltered. "She says I am ruined." "You are not ruined." She turned her face away. "No man will want a wife who cannot walk," she said. "You must leave me. You must." She waited. Silas reached for her hand. "I will not abandon you." She inhaled sharply as though startled. "We will be married here," he said. "At once. You will have my name. My protection." Honoria let her fingers curl weakly around his. "For as long as you live." She closed her eyes. Silas saw grief. What he did not see was the smile she allowed herself only after he was gone. She had offered him freedom, and in doing so had made certain he would never take it. By the 5th morning after the accident, Ashbourne Hall had learned a new rhythm. Footsteps softened in the corridors. Voices lowered without being asked. Doors closed more gently than necessary. The house no longer waited for Lady Honoria's summons. It anticipated them. Silas rose before dawn. He dressed in silence, fastening his cuffs by the grey light creeping through the tall windows of his bedchamber. The bed remained untouched. He did not go near it. Down the corridor, Honoria lay awake, counting sounds. The servants still moved toward her rooms first. Good. By mid-morning, the physician came and went. Lady Wickham stood while he spoke. "Rest," he said. "Quiet. Continued observation. And attendance," Lady Wickham added immediately. "Consistent attendance." She turned toward Silas before the man had finished gathering his bag. "She must be respectable. Discreet. No gossip." Silas stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back. He did not object. By noon, the decision had already arrived. Miss Eliza Fairleigh waited in the morning room. Her gloves were folded. Her posture was straight without rigidity. Black mourning silk fell cleanly, neither austere nor apologetic. When she lifted her head, her gaze was calm and steady. "This is Miss Fairleigh," Lady Wickham said. "She will attend my daughter." Eliza inclined her head. "Your Grace." Silas returned the nod. He noticed her eyes. Not because they demanded attention, because they took it quietly. In the days that followed, she moved into the sick room as if she had always belonged there. She read when asked. She stopped when told to stop. She adjusted pillows exactly as directed, even when the directions changed halfway through. When Honoria snapped, she absorbed it. When Lady Wickham watched, she did not fidget. Silas remained near the windows, near the desk, near the door. He watched. "You're too slow," Honoria said one afternoon, irritation sharpening her voice. "I am not helpless by choice." Eliza smoothed the blanket once more. "No, my lady." She did not hurry. She did not retreat. Silas looked up. That evening, he summoned the steward. "Double Miss Fairleigh's salary." The steward hesitated. "Your Grace, she has earned it." 3 days later, the garden was empty. Eliza slipped out during the quiet stretch between luncheon and rest, drawn by the late roses along the eastern wall. She paused longer than intended, fingers brushing a wilting stem. A thorn caught her. She hissed softly, drawing back as blood bloomed bright against her skin. "Miss Fairleigh." She turned at once. Silas stood a few paces away, coat discarded, sleeves rolled. He had come seeking quiet and found her instead. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "May I?" She hesitated, then extended her hand. He examined the cut with care, his touch precise. "You should wear gloves," he said. "I know." A smile crossed his mouth before either of them expected it. "Green," he said. She blinked. "Sir." "Your eyes." She lowered them at once. He released her hand. Behind the drawn curtains upstairs, Lady Honoria lay motionless, listening to the house settle around her. She did not yet know what had begun. But for the first time since the fall, Ashbourne Hall had shifted its attention, just slightly, away from her bed. That night, rain traced pale lines down the tall windows of Ashbourne Hall. The lamps along the drive blurred into soft halos, distant and indistinct. The house moved quietly, instinctively, as though sound itself risked provoking displeasure. Silas sat alone in the small study adjoining the library. A ledger lay open before him, untouched. He closed it and stood. Upstairs, the bell rang twice. Eliza entered Honoria's chamber with the evening draught. She set the tray within reach, adjusted the pillows as instructed, and stepped back. Honoria watched her closely. "You were in the garden today," she said. "Yes, my lady. I do not recall permitting it. I apologize." Honoria's gaze dropped to Eliza's hand. The faint mark near her finger had not fully faded. "Curious," she said. "You appear quite well for someone who tends an invalid." Eliza met her eyes. "I do my duty." "Do not mistake duty for importance." Eliza said nothing. Later, when the candles were dimmed and the corridors stilled, Silas stopped outside Honoria's door. He knocked once and entered. She lay arranged amid pillows, hair loose, nightgown pale and fine. "You did not come to me last night," she said. "You were resting." "And tonight?" Her gaze shifted toward the bed. "We are married." "Yes." She pressed a hand to her spine. "The pain has been dreadful. I hardly slept." Silas remained where he was. "You speak of pain," he said evenly. "How then shall you endure a husband?" The silence sharpened. She stared at him. "I meant—" "Good night," Silas said. He inclined his head and left. His footsteps were measured as he moved down the corridor. Only when he reached the study did he pause, hand resting briefly against the door frame. In the east wing, Eliza lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She turned onto her side and closed her eyes. By morning, the house resumed its pattern. Honoria rang often. She dismissed Eliza, then summoned her again. Pillows were moved, replaced, rearranged. Complaints rose and fell depending on who stood nearby. Eliza complied. She noticed small things, a foot shifting beneath the blankets, a knee bending when laughter came too quickly, pain that appeared on cue and vanished just as easily. Silas noticed as well. He did not comment. One afternoon he met Eliza in the corridor outside Honoria's room. She carried fresh linens, her attention fixed on keeping them from slipping. "Miss Fairleigh." She looked up. "Your Grace." "Your service has not gone unnoticed." "Thank you." He hesitated. "If there is ever, I will manage," she said gently. They held each other's gaze a moment longer than necessary. She passed him. Silas remained where he was, aware of a single unwelcome truth. The house felt different when she was near. Behind the closed door, Honoria lay very still, listening. For the first time, the silence did not obey her. By the end of the second week of marriage, Ashbourne Hall functioned smoothly. Meals arrived on time. Clocks struck their hours without interruption. Servants moved with the quiet efficiency expected of a great house managing misfortune. Silas noticed the precision. He also noticed the timing. Honoria's pain sharpened when visitors were present. Her weakness deepened when Lady Wickham called. When the house emptied, she slept through the night. Silas said nothing. One morning, just past 11, he paused in the corridor outside her chamber. The door stood slightly ajar. Inside, Eliza adjusted the curtains. "Not so wide," Honoria snapped. "The light gives me a headache." Eliza drew them in at once. As she did, Honoria shifted in irritation. Her leg moved. Not much. Enough. Eliza stopped. Not in shock. In recognition. Silas turned away before either woman looked up. That afternoon, Lady Wickham arrived. She took tea in the morning room, posture immaculate, eyes sharp. "My daughter depends on stability," she said coolly. "Disruption would be unwise." Eliza inclined her head. "I understand." Lady Wickham studied her a moment longer, then stood. "See that you remember it." When her carriage departed, the house exhaled. Eliza slipped into the garden soon after, following the gravel path along the yew hedge. She walked slowly, hands clasped, eyes fixed ahead. Silas found her there. "You favor this corner," he said. She turned. It reminds me of my mother. He waited. She said gardens tell the truth, Eliza added. Even when people don't. He considered that. She sounds formidable. She was. Silent, stretched, unguarded, dangerous. I wish to thank you, Silas said, for your patience. It is my duty. I don't believe that entirely. Her eyes lifted briefly, then lowered. That evening, Honoria rang often. Water, pillows, blankets removed, then replaced. Her voice rose when Silas was present, softened when he was not. Eliza, she said suddenly, sharp with intent. Leave us. Eliza glanced toward Silas. He nodded once. When the door closed, Honoria shifted against the pillows. She watches me, she said. She tends you. She judges me. Silas remained still. Later, long after the house settled, he paced the study, the corridor, the garden, the curtain, the leg. Across the hall, Eliza sat at her desk. The paper before her remained blank. Morning came. Ashbourne Hall looked unchanged, but the lie had learned the cost of being seen. Silas Vane stood alone at the breakfast table, untouched tea cooling beside him, listening to Ashbourne Hall wake. Footsteps. A door closed softly, the house moving as it always did. By 9:30, Honoria was conveyed from bed to chaise. The ritual was practiced now. Footmen careful, voices low, Eliza directing without command, her hands precise, her tone even. Slowly, she said. Yes, there. Honoria winced, her hand fluttering to her brow. Must everyone hover? Only until you're settled, my lady. Honoria's eyes slid toward Silas. You need not stay. I will remain. She looked away. Silas stayed by the door, a letter open in his hands, his attention elsewhere. Honoria shifted when she grew impatient. Her legs adjusted beneath the blanket. Pain appeared and vanished according to who stood closest, Eliza noticed. When Honoria demanded water and struck the glass aside moments later, Eliza knelt to clean the spill. Her eyes lifted, not to Silas, but to Honoria's feet. They rested easily. Silas felt the moment lock into place. That afternoon, Honoria declared herself fatigued and ordered privacy. Silas did not argue. Instead, he asked Eliza to meet him in the small study adjoining the library. She arrived on the stroke of the hour. You wish to speak with me, Your Grace? Yes. He did not sit. This is not an accusation. Eliza inclined her head. You've been attentive. It is my duty. And what have you noticed? A pause. Brief. Controlled. Inconsistencies, she said. Pain is not steady. Performance is. Silas nodded once. I will not act on suspicion, he said, but I will not ignore my own eyes. Nor will I, Eliza replied. The rain tapped against the window. Nothing else needed saying. That evening, Honoria was sharp. You watch me as though I'm on trial. I watch you because I am your husband. She laughed softly. How noble. Later, she rang for him again. Silas entered and stopped near the door. I cannot sleep, she said. The pain worsens at night. I'm sorry to hear that. She studied him. Stay. He sat. He did not move closer. Down the corridor, Eliza lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Aligned, he had said. The word remained. By morning, the rain would lift. The house would perform as it always had, but the watchers had found one another, and the lie, once seen, could no longer rest. Ashbourne Hall learned how to move around Lady Honoria. Footsteps softened near her door. Voices lowered. Requests were anticipated before they were spoken. Morning brought the same careful procession from bed to chaise. Evening ended with the same sharp dismissal of her husband. Silas did not interfere. He observed. Eliza Fairleigh managed the household rhythm with quiet efficiency. She neither indulged nor resisted. Pillows were adjusted precisely. Books were read aloud without commentary. Insults were met with composure, not submission. The staff took their cue from her. Honoria's temper sharpened as the days passed. You must forgive me, she said one afternoon, her voice honeyed and cutting. "I forget that grief lowers standards." Eliza inclined her head. "Grief affects people differently, my lady." Silas looked up from his papers. "That will be enough." Honoria's mouth tightened. "I was only speaking plainly." Plain speech is not an excuse for unkindness. Silas returned to his correspondence. The matter was closed. Eliza said nothing, but when she left the room, her step was steadier. That evening, rain pressed against the windows. Eliza went to the garden before dusk, drawn by habit rather than thought. The apple trees stood bare now, their branches dark against the sky. Silas joined her a few moments later. "You favor the garden when others avoid it," he said. "It reminds me that not everything is performed," she replied. "Some things simply endure." He smiled faintly. "That is comforting." They walked a short distance together. Neither hurried, neither lingered. "You have shown remarkable patience," Silas said at last. "I am grateful." "It is not personal," Eliza replied. "Pain often seeks an outlet, and when the pain is selective—" She slowed, only slightly. "That is not mine to decide." Silas nodded. He respected the boundary. By October, conversation between them came easily. Silences no longer strained. They noticed weariness in one another and did not comment on it. Nothing improper occurred. Nothing needed to. Late one night, Silas stood alone in his study, rain streaking the glass. He did not analyze the shift he felt. He simply acknowledged it. He trusted Eliza Fairleigh. Across the hall, Eliza lay awake, listening to the rain. This cannot last forever, she thought. Outside, the rain continued its patient fall, and within Ashbourne Hall, the performance held, thinner now, more fragile, waiting for the moment it would finally be tested. The knock came just before noon, not the discreet tap of a servant, but something firmer, confident, expectant, the sort of knock that assumed it would be answered. Silas looked up from his desk at once. Moments later, the butler appeared in the doorway, expression carefully neutral. "Your Grace, a gentleman to see you. He has given his name as Mr. Percival Hawthorne. He insists the matter is long-standing." Silas frowned. "Did he give a reason?" "He said only that he believes you are already acquainted with the circumstances." That alone was enough to unsettle him. "Show him in." Mr. Percival Hawthorne entered with the air of a man entirely pleased with his own importance. He was neatly dressed, impeccably correct, with a narrow face, prominent teeth, and a self-satisfied stiffness that suggested he practiced his expressions before mirrors. He carried a hat beneath his arm and a leather portfolio clutched to his chest like a badge of honor. Behind him stood a woman Silas did not recognize. Young, fashionably dressed, smiling with brittle politeness. "Your Grace." Hawthorne bowed too deeply, too eagerly. "A pleasure at last. I regret intruding unannounced, but urgency compels me." Silas rose slowly. "I do not recall the pleasure." Hawthorne laughed, a thin, self-approving sound. "Ah, yes. I suppose you wouldn't. Still, I imagine you know precisely why I'm here." "I'm afraid I do not." Hawthorne's smile faltered, only slightly. "Oh." He blinked. "How curious." The woman beside him shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should sit," Hawthorne said, recovering himself. "These matters are always clearer when one is properly settled." Silas gestured to the chairs. Hawthorne sat at once. The woman remained standing until he waved her forward. "My cousin," Hawthorne said. "Miss Agatha Bloomfield. She accompanies me everywhere now. A sensible arrangement." Miss Bloomfield inclined her head with forced chair. Silas folded his hands. "You may proceed, Mr. Hawthorne." Hawthorne cleared his throat, visibly pleased to hold the floor. "You see, Your Grace," he began, "I was engaged, quite formally, I assure you, to Lady Honoria Wickham." The words struck like a dropped plate. Silas did not move. "I beg your pardon," he said calmly. "Engaged," Hawthorne repeated. "In Florence, 2 years ago, while she was abroad with her mother, a most romantic period, really. Italy does encourage attachments." Miss Bloomfield's smile tightened. Silas felt the room narrow. "That is impossible," he said. Lady Honoria was betrothed to me. Hawthorne waved a hand. Yes, so she mentioned. A childhood arrangement. Quite obsolete by modern standards, she said. Hardly binding. Silas said nothing. Hawthorne leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. She told me you were delayed. Family tragedies. Uncertainty. One cannot fault a lady for securing her future when prospects waver. Silas's jaw tightened. And yet, Hawthorne continued brightly, here she is. Married, a duchess. One might almost admire the efficiency. Silence pressed down on the room. Miss Bloomfield cleared her throat. Percival? Yes, he said impatiently. The point. He opened the portfolio and withdrew several folded papers. I financed Lady Wickham's comforts during her time abroad. Generously. On the understanding that we would marry upon our return to England. I have letters, notes, a signed promise, in fact. Silas did not look at the papers. You expect me to believe my wife deceived you? He said. Hawthorne blinked again. Deceived? He laughed. My dear Duke, I expect you already knew. That is why I came to you, rather than to society at large. That was the moment the floor truly shifted. You assumed my knowledge. Silas said quietly. Of course. Hawthorne smiled, relieved. One does not marry a lady under such circumstances without understanding her past arrangements. I presumed you were party to the settlement. What settlement? Silas asked. Hawthorne frowned. The reimbursement, naturally. The word echoed. Miss Bloomfield looked down at her gloves. Sir, Silas said, voice perfectly controlled. You are mistaken. I was not aware of any such engagement, nor of any financial arrangement. Hawthorne's confidence cracked. You mean to tell me, he said slowly, that Lady Honoria did not inform you? No. A long, uncomfortable pause followed. Well, Hawthorne said at last, forcing a laugh, this is awkward. Silas rose. I will speak with my wife, he said. Privately. Hawthorne stood as well. Naturally. Of course. I trust we shall resolve this like gentlemen. I'm not unreasonable. Miss Bloomfield shifted closer to him. Until then, Silas added, you and your cousin will remain my guests. Hawthorne brightened instantly. How exceedingly generous. As they were escorted from the room, Hawthorne glanced back. Oh, one more thing, Your Grace. Lady Wickham's mother was present for much of our correspondence. She encouraged it, in fact. A most persuasive woman. The door closed behind them. Silas stood very still. Moments later, the bell rang sharply upstairs. Honoria was summoning him. In the corridor, Eliza paused mid-step as the sound echoed through the house. Something in the air had changed, thickened, sharpened. She turned slowly toward Honoria's door. Downstairs, Silas took a single breath. The performance was over, and for the first time, the lie had witnesses. Silas did not go upstairs at once. Instead, he summoned the steward. Mr. Hawthorne and his companion will be given rooms in the west wing, he said calmly. They are not to receive visitors. Their correspondence is to be delivered to me unopened. The steward hesitated. Your Grace? They are my guests, Silas continued evenly. And my responsibility. The hesitation vanished. At once, Your Grace. Only then did Silas ascend the stairs. Honoria was waiting, arranged precisely as she liked to be seen. Pale, fragile, hands folded atop the coverlid. She smiled when he entered. You took your time. A visitor arrived, Silas said. He did not sit. A man who believes he was once engaged to you. The smile did not fall. It flickered. How very odd, she said lightly. Men imagine many things. He claims the engagement occurred in Florence, Silas continued, while you were abroad with your mother. Her fingers tightened, just for a breath. Then she laughed. Europe was full of misunderstandings. So he says, Silas replied. He also believes you promised marriage in exchange for financial support. That did it. Honoria's breath caught. She masked it quickly, but the rhythm was wrong, uneven, too fast. You are listening to a stranger, she said sharply. A ridiculous man. He brought letters, Silas said. and dates, and sums." She turned her face away. "Then he should be dealt with. That is what I am doing." Silence stretched. "You don't believe him," Honoria said at last. Silas studied her. "I believe you are frightened." Her head snapped back. "How dare you?" "Enough," he said quietly. The word landed harder than any raised voice. "For the moment," Silas continued, "this matter remains private. That courtesy is yours to lose." Her eyes narrowed. "And what do you require of me?" "Consistency." She blinked. "What?" "You will receive visitors in the drawing room," he said. "No more seclusion, no more changes to your schedule. Meals, calls, rest, all at set hours." "My condition requires structure," he interrupted, "which you will now have." Honoria stared at him. She had never seen this version of her husband before. Not angry, not pleading, but immovable. "You cannot command my body," she said coldly. "I am commanding appearances," Silas replied. "That is what you value." He turned to leave. "You will ruin me," she said suddenly. Silas paused at the door. "That depends entirely on you." He did not look back. Downstairs, Eliza was rearranging the morning room when the bell rang again. Silas entered, his expression composed. "Miss Fairleigh," he said, "from today forward, you will oversee Lady Honoria's schedule." Eliza straightened. "Your Grace?" "All appointments, all visits, all physicians." He met her gaze steadily. "Nothing occurs without your knowledge." A weight settled on her shoulders. Not unwanted, but unmistakable. "I understand," she said quietly. "You will also be present during any medical examination," he added. "This is not a reflection on your lady. It is a matter of record." Eliza inclined her head. "Of course." Silas hesitated only a moment. "If you feel at any time that a request is unreasonable," he said, choosing each word, "you will bring it to me." Her eyes lifted. "I will." That night Hawthorne was invited to dine. Not privately, formally. Honoria was wheeled into the dining room precisely at 7. The servants were present. The candles were bright. There was nowhere to hide. Hawthorne beamed. "Your Grace, Lady Ashbourne." "How charming." Honoria's smile was brittle. Conversation began politely enough. Weather, travel, Europe. Hawthorne, warmed by wine and attention, grew expansive. "Florence was delightful," he said, "though costly. Lady Honoria had exquisite tastes." Her fork stilled. Silas sipped his wine. "Did she?" "Oh, yes," Hawthorne continued. "Opera boxes, carriages, silk imported from Milan." "That will do," Honoria snapped. Hawthorne blinked. "Pardon?" Silas set his glass down. "Mr. Hawthorne," he said pleasantly, "you will confine your remarks to neutral subjects." Hawthorne flushed. "Of course. Naturally." But the damage was done. Eliza stood near the wall, watching, not Hawthorne, but Honoria. She saw the way Honoria's legs shifted beneath the blanket when anger overtook caution. Saw how quickly she stilled them when she realized she was being observed. Saw Silas see it too. After dinner, Honoria retired early, claiming exhaustion. Silas did not follow. Instead, he returned to his study, where Hawthorne's portfolio lay open on the desk. Letters, dates, signatures. The truth was no longer hypothetical. Across the hall, Eliza sat at her small desk, hands folded, heart steady but alert. The house was changing, not loudly, not dramatically, but decisively. And the woman who had built her power on performance had begun to lose control of the stage. Ashbourne Hall woke the next morning already tense. The servants moved carefully, as though the walls themselves were listening. Doors were closed more softly than usual. Trays were carried with exaggerated steadiness. News of last night's dinner had not spread. But something had shifted, and houses like Ashbourne always sensed it before words caught up. Silas rose early. He dressed without haste, fastening his cuffs with the same deliberate care he brought to everything now. Control was not loud. It was maintained. By the time Honoria was conveyed to the drawing room, the schedule had already been set. Eliza oversaw it quietly. The curtains were open to a precise width. The chaise was positioned near the window, not the fire. Tea was brought at the appointed hour. Not earlier, not later. Honoria noticed. "You are very efficient today," she said coolly. Eliza inclined her head. "Your Grace requested consistency." Honoria's gaze flicked to Silas, who stood near the window, reading correspondence. "So he did," Honoria murmured. "How thorough." The physician arrived shortly after 11. Silas remained in the room. That alone was new. Honoria stiffened as the examination began, her performance careful, practiced. She winced at the appropriate moments, breathed shallowly when touched, spoke of pain in a tone designed to invite sympathy. Eliza stood just behind the physician, eyes attentive, face composed. "Any sensation here?" the doctor asked, pressing lightly at Honoria's ankle. "No," Honoria said at once. A second passed, then a third. Eliza saw it, the faint tightening of muscle before stillness returned. So did Silas. The physician straightened, puzzled, then moved on. When he left, Silas thanked him politely and escorted him to the door himself. Honoria exhaled sharply once they were alone. "You are hovering," she snapped. "I am present," Silas replied. She laughed without humor. "And Miss Fairleigh, too. Am I never to be spared an audience?" Eliza met her gaze calmly. "Your condition requires careful attention." "Does it?" Honoria's eyes glittered. "Or does my husband simply prefer you nearby?" The air sharpened. Silas turned. "That will be enough." Honoria's mouth tightened. "You defend her readily." "I correct cruelty," he said. "It has nothing to do with preference." Eliza lowered her eyes, but the heat rose to her cheeks despite herself. Later in the corridor, Silas stopped her. "Miss Fairleigh," she turned at once. "Your Grace, you handled the examination well," he said. "Thank you. It is my duty." "Yes," he said quietly. "And you fulfill it with integrity." The word lingered. Eliza nodded once. "I strive to." He hesitated. Just a fraction, then stepped aside to let her pass. He did not touch her. That restraint cost him more than he liked to admit. By afternoon, Honoria's patience had worn thin. She rang repeatedly, sent Eliza away, called her back, complained of drafts, of light, of imagined slights. Eliza complied with every request, unruffled. Silas watched from a distance, noting the rhythm, irritation, demand, retreat. When Hawthorne appeared in the corridor, escorted, contained, Honoria's temper flared outright. "He is still here," she hissed. "For now," Silas said. "He remains my guest. He has no right. He claims otherwise." Her eyes flashed. "You believe him?" "I believe in evidence." Silence fell. "You are humiliating me," Honoria said quietly. "No," Silas replied. "I am preventing spectacle." That evening, Eliza prepared to retire when Silas summoned her to the study. She entered cautiously. "You wish to see me, Your Grace?" "Yes." He remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. "Tomorrow Lady Wickham intends to call." Eliza's brows lifted slightly. "I see." "She will attempt to remove Mr. Hawthorne," Silas continued, "or silence him. Or you." Eliza met his gaze. "She will not succeed." "I know," he said, "but I want you prepared." "For what, precisely?" "For pressure," Silas replied. "And for proximity." Her pulse quickened. "Your Grace, you will remain with Lady Honoria at all times," he said, "and you will speak plainly to me, without fear of reprisal." She inhaled slowly. "You place me in a difficult position." "I place you in an honest one," he said. "If that becomes unbearable, you may step away." She looked at him then, truly looked, and saw the effort it took him to say that. "I will not," she said softly. Something unguarded flickered across his face. "Thank you," he said. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Miss Fairleigh." She paused. "You should know," he said carefully, "that nothing you are doing will be misinterpreted by me." Her breath caught, just slightly. "I understand," she said. That night, Honoria lay awake, listening. She heard Silas's footsteps pass her door, and not stop. She heard Eliza's door close softly down the hall. The house had chosen its balance, and she felt, for the first time since the accident, the sharp edge of fear. Because the line Silas refused to cross with Eliza was the very thing that made her dangerous. Not temptation, but trust. And once trust had shifted, no performance could hold it in place forever. Lady Wickham arrived just after luncheon. Not alone. 2 carriages followed hers into the drive. One bearing a respectable matron Silas recognized from the charity board. The other a distant cousin whose fondness for gossip was well known. The timing was precise, the audience deliberate. Silas watched from the window as the party was received. So this was her answer. "Admit them," he said calmly. The drawing room was prepared at once. Curtains drawn to a flattering angle, chairs arranged in a careful semicircle. Honoria was conveyed in with solemn attention, her expression fragile, her hands folded as though already resigned to sympathy. Eliza stood slightly behind her chair. She felt the tension before a word was spoken. "My poor girl," Lady Wickham said, sweeping forward. "You look exhausted." Honoria sighed delicately. "I am managing." Lady Wickham turned then, gaze sharp. "And you are Miss Fairleigh?" "Yes, my lady. I trust my daughter has not been overtaxed by unnecessary attentions." Eliza met the look without flinching. Her care has followed the physician's instructions precisely. Silas took his place near the mantel. "Mother," Honoria murmured. "Please." "Of course," Lady Wickham said sweetly. "We only wish to support you." The guests settled. Tea was poured. Polite murmurs filled the room. Then Hawthorne entered. The air shifted. He bowed too deeply, too eagerly. "Lady Wickham." "How fortunate." Lady Wickham froze, just long enough to betray surprise. "Sir," she said coolly, "you are mistaken." "Am I?" Hawthorne smiled, pleased with himself. "Then perhaps you will explain why your daughter and I exchanged letters for over a year, why I financed her European comforts, why marriage was promised." A gasp rippled through the room. Honoria pressed a hand to her chest. "This is cruel." Silas spoke at once. "Mr. Hawthorne will mind his tone." Hawthorne inclined his head. "Of course, Your Grace. I meant no offense, only clarity." Lady Wickham recovered quickly. "My daughter was abroad for her health. If misunderstandings occurred, they were encouraged," Hawthorne said brightly. "By you." The room went still. Eliza felt Honoria's body tense beneath her hands. Felt it, and saw the movement Honoria forgot to suppress when fear overtook performance. Silas saw it too. "Enough," Silas said. He crossed the room, not hurried, not angry, simply present. "Mr. Hawthorne," he continued, "you will provide the documents you referenced. You will do so privately." Hawthorne blinked. "Privately?" "Yes," Silas said. "This room is not a stage." Lady Wickham bristled. "You cannot silence a gentleman who has been wronged." "I'm not silencing him," Silas replied evenly. "I'm controlling the manor." He turned then, not to Honoria, but to Eliza. "Miss Fairleigh," he said, "would you be so kind as to ensure Lady Ashbourne is comfortable? She appears distressed." The room noticed. Eliza did not hesitate. She stepped closer, her presence steady, grounding. Honoria's eyes flashed, jealousy, fear, fury, all at once. "I am perfectly capable," Honoria snapped. "Of course," Eliza replied quietly, "but you need not bear this alone." Silas's gaze returned to the guests. "I thank you for your concern," he said. "Lady Ashbourne will rest. This discussion is concluded." One of the women rose uncertainly. "Your Grace, I will see you out." There was no argument. The guests departed with hurried courtesies, curiosity sharpened rather than satisfied. Lady Wickham lingered. "You are making a grave error," she hissed once the door closed. "You think you're self-righteous, but you will destroy her." Silas regarded her coolly. "You destroyed her the moment you taught her deception." Her face drained of color. "I will protect my name," he continued, "and I will protect what is mine. You would do well to remember that." Lady Wickham left without another word. Later, when the house had quieted, Silas stood outside the drawing room. Eliza emerged moments later, her expression composed but pale. "She's resting," she said. "Thank you." A pause. "You were right to intervene," Eliza added softly. "I was right to trust you," Silas replied. Their eyes met, just long enough. "Miss Fairleigh," he said carefully, "I regret the position this places you in." "I chose it," she answered, knowing the cost. That honesty settled between them, warm and dangerous. Down the hall, Honoria lay awake, listening. She had seen it now. Not suspicion, not sympathy, but certainty. The room had turned, and it had not turned toward her. The performance could still continue, but the audience was no longer on her side. Ashbourne Hall did not sleep easily after the visitors left. The servants spoke in glances. Doors were shut more carefully than before. What had been whispered was now felt, the kind of tension that pressed against the walls and refused to be ignored. Silas spent the evening in his study, the letters spread neatly across his desk. They were undeniable. Dates written in Honoria's hand, promises framed as affection, requests that slid easily into expectation, and beneath them all, the quiet certainty that none of it had been accidental. He did not rage. He read. Upstairs, Honoria waited. She had dismissed Eliza early, claiming fatigue. The door had closed, and the silence afterward had felt too wide, too exposed. For the first time since the accident, solitude did not comfort her. When Silas finally entered, she was ready, pale, arranged, wounded. "You humiliated me," she said at once. Silas closed the door behind him. "You humiliated yourself," her breath caught. "How dare you? You invited witnesses," he continued calmly. "You misjudged who would control the room." She laughed sharply. "You enjoyed it, watching me reduced." "No," Silas said. "I endured it." He crossed the room and set the letters on the bedside table. "These are yours." Honoria stared at them, her color drained. "You read my private correspondence." "I read evidence," he replied. "There is a difference." Silence stretched. "You were betrothed to me from childhood," he continued. "You knew that, and yet you promised marriage elsewhere. You accepted money under false pretenses." She lifted her chin. "I did what was necessary." "For whom?" "For us," she snapped. "For survival. My mother's estate was failing. You were distant. Your parents were gone. You left us nothing but uncertainty." Silas studied her. "And so you decided to secure every future but mine." Her eyes flickered, calculation warring with panic. "You still married me," she said. "You still gave me your name." "Because you forced my hand," Silas replied. "Not because you earned it." That was the crack. Her voice rose. "I saved myself, and in doing so," he said quietly, "you destroyed whatever trust remained." She turned her face away, breath uneven. "You cannot expose me. I will not survive it." Silas did not answer at once. Instead he said, "You will receive Mr. Hawthorne tomorrow." Her head snapped back. "What?" "You will hear his claim in full," Silas continued. "You will respond, and you will do so with witnesses present." "I won't," she said, suddenly desperate. "I am ill. I cannot—" "You will," he said, "because the alternative is far worse." She searched his face. "You would ruin me." "I would restore truth," he replied. "What survives that is your concern." When he left, Honoria lay shaking, not with pain, but with fear. Down the corridor, Eliza paused outside her door, hearing raised voices fade into silence. She waited. Moments later, Silas appeared. Their eyes met, and in that look was everything he did not say upstairs. "You should not have heard that," he said quietly. "I did not hear much," Eliza replied. "Only enough." He hesitated. "This situation places you in an unfair position." She nodded, but not an unclear one. A breath passed between them. "I will stand where I am most useful," she said. "If that is no longer here, say so." Silas looked at her, really looked at her, and something softened, dangerously. "I would prefer," he said carefully, "that you remain." Her heart thudded once, hard. "Then I will." That night, Honoria rang her bell repeatedly. Eliza did not come. Silas had given instructions. Morning brought grey skies and resolve. Hawthorne was summoned. Lady Wickham arrived unannounced, her expression tight with fury when she saw the arrangement. Chairs aligned, servants present, the physician standing unobtrusively near the door. Honoria was brought in last. She took one look at the room and understood. This was not a performance. Silas stood. "Mr. Hawthorne will present his claim," he said. "Lady Ashbourne will respond." Hawthorne smiled eagerly. At last, as he began, Eliza watched Honoria closely, not with suspicion, with clarity. And in that clarity, she saw it. The moment Honoria forgot herself, the unconscious shift of her legs, the ease with which she bore weight when anger eclipsed fear. The physician saw it too. So did Silas. The mask did not fall all at once. It cracked, and through that crack the truth began to show, not as accusation, but as inevitability. Across the room, Silas felt it settle in his chest. The end was no longer a matter of if, only when. And standing quietly at the edge of it all, Eliza Fairleigh felt the weight of something just as certain. Whatever came next would change her life. Because once truth was spoken aloud, there would be no returning to silence, and neither of them could pretend any longer that their fates were not already bound together. No one spoke at first. The room held its breath, servants frozen at their posts, Lady Wickham rigid with contained fury, Hawthorne all but vibrating with anticipation. Honoria felt it before she saw it. The physician's eyes had not returned to her face. They remained fixed on her legs, on the way her weight had shifted, the way muscle answered instinct before thought could intervene. "How long?" he asked slowly. "Have you experienced sensation in your lower limbs, my lady?" Honoria laughed, too quickly. "I told you, sensation comes and goes." The physician did not smile. "It does not behave so selectively." Lady Wickham stepped forward. "This interrogation is unnecessary." Silas raised a hand. Not sharply, not dramatically. The room obeyed him anyway. "Doctor," Silas said, "you may continue." The physician nodded once. He crossed the room, crouched slightly, and pressed 2 fingers just above Honoria's ankle. She flinched. It was small, human, instinctive. It was enough. The silence that followed was absolute. Honoria realized, too late, what she had done. "That was reflex," Lady Wickham snapped. "No," the physician said quietly. "That was response." Hawthorne let out a soft, astonished laugh. "Extraordinary." Honoria's breath came shallow now. "You promised," she began, then stopped herself. Silas's gaze sharpened. "Promised whom?" he asked. Her eyes flicked to her mother, to Hawthorne, to the watching servants. The truth pressed in from all sides. "I did what I had to do," she said at last. "I could not lose everything." "You did not save yourself," Silas replied evenly. "You sacrificed others." Hawthorne cleared his throat. "If I may," he said brightly, "I believe this resolves both matters." Silas turned to him. "You will be compensated. Not as a concession, but as closure. You will leave England immediately thereafter." Hawthorne bowed. "Most satisfactory." Silas's attention returned to Honoria. "Our marriage," he continued, "was entered under false pretenses." Lady Wickham's composure finally cracked. "You cannot abandon her." "I am not abandoning her," Silas said. "I am ending the deception." He turned to the physician. "You will document what you observed." The physician inclined his head. "And you," Silas said to Lady Wickham, "will return to your estate. Today." Her lips trembled with rage. "You think this will elevate you?" "No," Silas replied. "I think it will free me." The room began to move again, slowly, cautiously, as if waking from a spell. Honoria was wheeled out last. As she passed Eliza, her gaze burned. "You," she said hoarsely. "You watched." Eliza met her eyes. I listened. That was all. Later, when the house had emptied of witnesses, Ashbourne Hall felt unfamiliar, lighter. Silas stood alone in the study, the door open to the corridor. He did not sit. He did not pace. He simply stood, hands resting on the back of a chair, as if grounding himself in what was real. Eliza approached quietly. "It is finished," she said. "One part of it," he replied. She hesitated at the threshold. "You did what was right." He looked at her then, and the weight of what he had restrained, protected, endured, pressed suddenly between them. "I did what was necessary," he said. "The two are not always the same." A pause. "You are free now," Eliza said gently. The words struck him, not as relief, but as possibility. "I am," he said. "And you?" She lifted her chin. "I will leave if you wish." He shook his head at once. "No." The firmness of it surprised them both. "I mean," he added more quietly, "not yet. There is no urgency." Her heart quickened. "Then I will remain." Silas stepped closer, not touching, not crossing, but near enough that the choice itself felt charged. "Miss Fairleigh," he said, voice low, controlled, "everything between us has been shaped by circumstance, by restraint, by silence." "Yes," she said. "I will not act while there is imbalance," he continued. "While gratitude could be mistaken for obligation." Her breath caught, not with disappointment, but with respect. "I would expect nothing less," she said. Their eyes held. This time, neither looked away first. Outside, the afternoon light shifted across the lawn, brightening Ashbourne Hall in something new. Not peace, not certainty, but honesty. Down the corridor, Honoria's door remained closed. Her reign had ended without spectacle, and in the quiet left behind, something far more dangerous began to take shape. Not a lie, not a performance, but the slow, deliberate beginning of a love that neither of them would rush, and neither would deny. The news did not break all at once. It seeped. First through servants' doors left ajar, then through carriage conversations held just a shade too loudly. By the following afternoon, Ashbourne Hall had become a place people spoke of in careful tones, not with scandal yet, but with curiosity sharpened by restraint. Silas allowed it. He did not issue denials. He did not offer explanations. He appeared precisely as expected, calm, composed, present, and in doing so, gave society nothing dramatic to feast upon. That was its own kind of provocation. The first formal call arrived before tea. Lady Mercer, all politeness and probing glances, was received in the drawing-room. Silas stood near the window, hands folded behind his back. Eliza remained discreetly to one side, ostensibly occupied with arrangements. "My dear Duke," Lady Mercer said with a practiced sigh, "one cannot help but hear whispers." "I imagine not," Silas replied evenly. "And Lady Ashbourne," she ventured. "We are all quite concerned." "She's resting," he said, "and will continue to do so." The tone discouraged further inquiry. Lady Mercer's gaze slid, briefly, involuntarily, to Eliza. Silas noticed. That evening, he made his first deliberate choice. Eliza was summoned, not privately, not quietly, but in full view of the household. "Miss Fairleigh," Silas said as footmen paused mid-step, "I would have you oversee the charitable accounts going forward." Eliza blinked. "Your Grace, you have shown judgment and discretion," he continued. "I trust you." The word landed where everyone could hear it. Eliza inclined her head. "I will do my utmost." Honoria, listening from behind her closed door, understood immediately what this meant. It was not affection. It was legitimacy. The next morning, Silas accompanied Eliza into the village. It was a simple errand: supplies, correspondence, a visit to the apothecary, but nothing about it was accidental. He did not offer his arm. He walked beside her. The effect was immediate. Heads turned. Conversations stalled. Assumptions formed and reformed in real time. Eliza felt it keenly. "You need not do this," she said quietly, once they were out of earshot. "I know," Silas replied. "I chose to." She swallowed. People will draw conclusions. Yes, he said. They always do. And if they are wrong, he glanced at her, then they will learn. They did not speak again until they returned to the carriage. That night, Honoria rang for him. He went, because avoiding her now would be cowardice, and he would not allow her that victory. She looked diminished, not weaker, but smaller, her certainty fractured. "You are replacing me," she said flatly. "I am continuing," Silas replied. "You no longer direct my life." Her voice trembled. "With her." He did not deny it. "With integrity," he corrected. "You love her," Honoria whispered. Silas held her gaze. "I respect her." The distinction cut deeper than any confession. "You will make me invisible," she said. "No," he replied. "You made yourself so when you chose deception over truth." When he left, Honoria did not ring again. The following days confirmed what society sensed. Eliza's role expanded, visibly, publicly. She was consulted, deferred to, trusted. Invitations addressed to Ashbourne Hall began including her name, always carefully, always respectfully. She bore it with grace, but not ease. One afternoon, Silas found her standing alone in the West Gallery, staring out at the lawn. "This was not what you signed up for," he said. "No," she admitted, "but I understand why you are doing it. That does not obligate you to endure it." She turned to him. "You are not using me." He hesitated. "No." "Then let the world think what it likes," she said softly. "I know where I stand." Something in his chest tightened. "Do you?" he asked. "With myself," she replied. That night, as rain once again traced slow paths down the windows, Silas stood outside her door. He did not knock. He rested his hand briefly against the wood, a gesture unseen, unremarked, but heavy with restraint, and then stepped away. Across the hall, Eliza sat awake, aware of his presence without hearing it. The world was watching now, judging, guessing, rearranging its expectations, and in the quiet between what was said and what was done, something dangerous and steady was forming. Not the rush of scandal, not the comfort of certainty, but the deliberate shaping of a future neither of them would enter lightly, because once the world began to look at them together, there would be no pretending that what lay ahead was simple, only that it was chosen. The invitation arrived sealed in cream and gold. Lady Harcourt's hand was unmistakable, confident, deliberate, impossible to ignore. A dinner, intimate, select. Silas read it once, then set it aside without comment. Eliza noticed anyway. "You will attend," she said quietly, not looking up from the accounts spread across the table. Silas's mouth curved faintly. "You have grown adept at anticipating me." "You cannot allow the world to decide for you," she replied. "If you refuse now, they will imagine reasons worse than truth." He considered that. "And if I accept?" "They will watch," Eliza said simply, "which they are already doing." That night, Ashbourne Hall prepared. Silas dressed with care, dark coat, crisp linen, nothing ostentatious. Eliza wore a gown of restrained elegance, unadorned but precise, the kind that spoke not of ambition, but of self-possession. When they entered Lady Harcourt's dining room together, the attention was immediate. Subtle, polite, relentless. Conversations paused, eyes measured distance, posture, restraint. Silas did not offer Eliza his arm. He pulled out her chair. The distinction was not lost on anyone. Dinner unfolded with practiced civility. Topics drifted safely. Harvests, Parliament, the weather, until Lady Harcourt leaned back in her chair and smiled with dangerous warmth. "And how is Lady Ashbourne faring?" she asked. Silas did not glance at Eliza. "She is settled elsewhere," he replied evenly, "under her mother's care." A murmur followed. Not scandal, but confirmation. "And you?" Lady Harcourt continued. "You appear unburdened." Silas met her gaze calmly. "I am." The word landed. Eliza felt it like a tightening in her chest. Not fear, but clarity. Later, as dessert was served, A gentleman further down the table laughed softly. "Forgive my curiosity," he said, eyes flicking to Eliza, "but one cannot help noticing that Ashbourne now conducts his affairs with remarkable efficiency." Silas smiled faintly. "I have learned the value of integrity." "And you credit Miss Fairleigh with that?" the man pressed. The room stilled. "Yes," Silas said. "I do." Eliza's fingers tightened around her napkin. After dinner, the guests dispersed into smaller conversations. Eliza stepped away toward the terrace, needing air, composure, something unobserved. Silas followed a moment later. "You did not have to say that," she said quietly, hands resting on the balustrade. "I know," he replied. "I chose to." She turned to face him. "You are drawing lines you cannot easily erase." "Yes, people will assume they already do." Silence stretched between them, charged but careful. "You could still step back," Eliza said. "Let this be interpreted as gratitude, as convenience." Silas shook his head once. "I will not misname what I am doing." Her breath caught. "And what is that?" she asked. He did not answer at once. "I'm choosing," he said finally. "Publicly. Deliberately." Her voice was steady, though her heart was not. "Choosing what?" "Truth," he replied. "Even if it costs me." She searched his face. "And if it costs me?" The question mattered more than any other. Silas stepped closer, not touching, not crossing, but close enough that the choice itself pressed between them. "Then I will stop," he said. "At once." She believed him. That was the danger. A laugh drifted from inside, the party resuming, the world still turning. "You are free now," Eliza said softly. "You need not tether yourself to another storm." "I'm not free," Silas replied. "Not yet." He hesitated, then added, "But I am no longer bound by lies." They returned inside together, not arm in arm, not defiantly, but aligned. By morning, the whispers would sharpen. By evening, assumptions would harden. But something irreversible had occurred. Silas Vane, Duke of Ashbourne, had stepped into the light with intention, and Eliza Fairleigh, without asking for it, now stood where the world could see her. Not as a companion, not as a convenience, but as a woman whose presence altered the balance of power itself. The choice had been made. Not in passion, not in haste, but with eyes open, and once made, it would demand an answer from them both. The carriage Arilis did not sleep. He spent the night in motion, pacing the study, drafting letters he did not yet send, staring at maps spread across the desk as if geography itself might confess. Italy, France, accounts, dates, names, patterns that refused to be coincidence. By dawn, one truth was unavoidable. Honoria's story required effort to believe. The truth did not. He sealed 2 letters just after breakfast, one to a solicitor in London, the other to a banking house in Florence. He did not inform his wife. Instead, he requested Eliza. Not summoned. Requested. She arrived within minutes, composed but alert, her expression unreadable. "You wish to speak with me, Your Grace?" "Yes." He gestured to the chair opposite him, then remained standing himself. "I want to be clear. This is not an instruction." She inclined her head. "Then speak freely." "I am pursuing inquiries," he said. "Quietly. I expect resistance." Her fingers tightened. "From Lady Honoria, and from those who enabled her." Eliza held his gaze. "And you wish to know how far I am willing to be involved?" "Yes." Silence settled. Not heavy, but deliberate. "At present," she said carefully, "I am in your household as a companion. That position gives me access, but not authority. If matters turn public, my presence becomes dangerous. I would not allow harm to come to you." "I know." Her voice softened. "That is not the same as protection." He nodded. "Then tell me what you need." The question surprised them both. "I need clarity," she said after a moment, "about why you're doing this." Silas did not answer immediately. "I am doing this," he said at last, "because I refuse to live bound to a lie, and because I will not let truth be buried simply because it is inconvenient. She searched his face. And if the truth frees you, his voice lowered, then I will face what freedom requires. The words were not a promise. They were an opening. Eliza rose slowly. Then I will remain, she said. For now, but only under one condition. Yes? No secrecy between us, she said. No half-truths. If I am to stand where I stand, I must not be made complicit in deception. He nodded once. Agreed. They stood there, the distance between them measured, precise, charged. Nothing improper occurred. Everything changed. That afternoon, Honoria demanded Eliza be dismissed. She watches me, Honoria hissed, her eyes bright with resentment. She poisons you against me. Silas did not raise his voice. Miss Fairleigh will remain. You choose her over me? I choose competence, he replied evenly, and calm. Honoria's hand clenched in the blanket. You humiliate me. I refuse to indulge you, he said. That night, Eliza packed nothing, but she prepared herself. She moved through the house with new awareness, noting what had once passed unnoticed. The way Honoria's temper spiked when letters arrived. The way her mother's name was spoken only in irritation. The way accounts were kept separate, guarded. Silas watched her too. Not as a duke overseeing staff, but as a man witnessing resolve. In the corridor near midnight, they nearly collided. Forgive me, Eliza said softly. Stay, he replied, just as quietly. They stood there, inches apart, not touching, not retreating. I should go, she said. I know. Neither moved. This is unwise, she added. Yes. Still they remained. I'm not asking for anything, Silas said. Not affection, not loyalty beyond what you have already given. She met his gaze, her breath steady. Then what are you asking? Permission? He said simply. To see you, fully, without pretending this is nothing. Her heart struck once, hard. And what happens if I grant it? Nothing, he said honestly. Yet, the word mattered. Eliza exhaled slowly. Then you may. It was not a confession. It was not a promise. It was consent to awareness. He stepped back at once, giving her space, giving her safety. Thank you, he said. She nodded, then turned and walked away, her spine straight, her steps controlled. Behind her, Silas stood utterly still. Upstairs, Honoria lay awake, listening to the house breathe. Something had shifted. Not loudly, not publicly, but decisively. For the first time, the lie was no longer protected by silence, and the truth, once given permission, had begun to move. The rain stopped just before dawn. Ashbourne Hall woke to a quiet it had not known in weeks, the sort that felt deliberate, as though the house itself were holding its breath. Silas took his breakfast alone. He did not touch the food. He read the letter from Florence again instead, the one delivered just past midnight, its seal broken with hands that had not trembled. Accounts confirmed. Dates aligned. Funds transferred during Honoria's stay abroad. Promises recorded. Silence purchased. There was no longer room for doubt. He folded the letter carefully and stood. By mid-morning, Honoria was restless. She complained of tightness in her legs, of headaches, of dizziness. She rang twice for Eliza in quick succession, then dismissed her without reason. Her eyes flicked often toward the door. She was waiting. Eliza knew it. So did Silas. When Honoria finally demanded air, Silas surprised them both. We will go to the south terrace, he said calmly. Honoria blinked. It is uneven. You will be conveyed, he replied. Briefly. Eliza supervised the transfer herself, her movements precise, her expression neutral. She noticed how Honoria's weight shifted, naturally unconsciously, how her muscles responded without hesitation. Silas noticed too. On the terrace, the autumn air was sharp and clean. Honoria reclined beneath a shawl, eyes narrowed against the light. You need not linger, she said pointedly to Eliza. I will remain, Silas said instead. Honoria's lips pressed thin. Minutes passed. The silence grew heavy. Then Honoria laughed suddenly, brittle, bright. You look at me as though I'm a puzzle. Silas regarded her steadily. You have become one. Her gaze snapped to his. You accuse me again. I observe, he said. You always were cold, she snapped. Even before the accident. Before the deception, he corrected. Eliza felt the word land like a blade. Honoria stiffened. Mind your tongue. I have, Silas replied. Until now. He turned slightly, not away from Honoria, but toward Eliza. Miss Fairleigh, he said quietly, will you walk with me? It was not a question. Eliza hesitated only a moment before nodding. They stepped a few paces down the terrace, far enough to speak freely, close enough to remain visible. Silas did not look at her at first. I have proof, he said, of Europe, of the money, of the promises. Eliza inhaled slowly. Then the truth is no longer fragile. No, he agreed. It is dangerous. She met his gaze. And what will you do? I will confront her, he said, publicly, if required. Her chest tightened. That will destroy her. It will free me. The honesty of it startled them both. I will not ask you to stand where you cannot, he added. Eliza looked back toward Honoria, who watched them with thinly veiled fury. I will not leave, Eliza said. Not yet. Silas turned fully toward her then. You understand what that costs? Yes. And you still choose it? Yes. The words settled between them. Quiet, irrevocable. For a moment, neither moved. Then Silas lifted his hand, not to touch her, to hesitate. May I? The question was unspoken, but unmistakable. Eliza felt the world narrow to that space between them, to the steadiness of his breath, to the restraint in his eyes. She nodded, just once. His fingers brushed her hand. Not a grasp, not a claim. A deliberate, reverent contact that lasted no more than a heartbeat. It was enough. Eliza's breath caught. Silas withdrew at once, as though restraint were the only thing keeping them upright. They stood there, shaken, composed, altered. Behind them, Honoria watched. She saw everything, the alignment, the restraint, the truth she could no longer control. That night, Honoria rang her bell and did not wait for Eliza. She sent for her mother instead. Silas, alone in the study, drafted one final letter, this time to Parliament Council. Across the hall, Eliza lay awake, her hand still warm where his had touched it. It had not been passion, it had been recognition, and recognition, once crossed, could not be undone. Outside, the clouds parted, and somewhere in London, a reckoning began to gather momentum. Ashbourne Hall learned the truth before London did. Not through proclamation, not through scandal sheets, through silence. By the third morning after the terrace, the servants no longer glanced toward Honoria's door with the same anxious reverence. Footsteps resumed their normal cadence. Voices no longer softened instinctively. The house had begun, quietly, decisively, to withdraw its allegiance. Honoria felt it at once. She rang for Eliza before breakfast. No answer. She rang again, harder this time. When the door finally opened, it was not Eliza who entered. It was Silas. You dismissed her from your chamber, he said calmly. You will not summon her again. Honoria sat upright, fury flashing. You cannot bar my own companion. I can, he replied, when her presence is no longer safe. Her voice sharpened. So you do choose her. Silas did not rise to the bait. I choose order and truth. That afternoon, Lady Wickham arrived without warning. Her carriage cut a severe line through the drive, her posture rigid as she entered the morning room. She did not sit. This nonsense ends now, she said crisply. My daughter is unwell. You are being influenced. Silas stood opposite her, hands clasped behind his back. Your daughter is capable of standing, he said. The room went still. Lady Wickham laughed once. How dare you? I have correspondence from Florence, Silas continued evenly. banking records, signed notes, promises made while under engagement. Honoria cried out, "You will not shame me." "I will not protect deceit," he replied. Lady Wickham's composure cracked, not into grief, but calculation. "You owe my daughter," she said. "Her future depends on this marriage." Silas's voice was quiet. Her future depended on honesty. Lady Wickham turned sharply toward Eliza, who stood near the doorway, pale but unflinching. "This woman has poisoned you." "No," Silas said. "She refused to lie." That night, word reached Mayfair. Not gossip, confirmation. A solicitor's visit, a quiet inquiry, a banker's letter opened in the presence of witnesses. The scandal did not erupt. It settled. By evening, Honoria's story no longer held. She demanded to see Silas after supper. He came, not alone. Eliza remained visible, seated near the window, hands folded in her lap. Honoria's voice trembled. "You humiliate me before her." "I refuse to conduct truth in secret," Silas replied. "You never loved me," Honoria snapped. Silas did not deny it. "I honored the bond I believed existed," he said. "You exploited it." Her anger collapsed into something uglier. "You will be ruined without me." Silas met her gaze steadily. "I was nearly ruined by you." Silence followed. Long, decisive. By morning, Honoria was confined to her chambers. Not imprisoned, contained. The household adjusted with remarkable speed. Eliza was reassigned, formally, visibly, to the management of the East Wing and correspondence oversight. The promotion was quiet, irrefutable. That afternoon, Silas found her in the garden. The air was crisp, leaves gathered along the stone paths. "You did not have to stay," he said. "I chose to," she replied. They walked slowly, not touching. "You will be spoken of," he warned. "Your position will invite attention." She met his gaze. "I can withstand attention. I cannot withstand silence." He smiled faintly. That evening, London received its first whisper. By the next morning, it received certainty. Honoria Wickham's marriage was under legal review, and Silas Vane, Duke of Ashbourne, had withdrawn his protection. Publicly, decisively. That night, Eliza sat alone in her room, reading the letter that confirmed it. The solicitor's hand unmistakable. The marriage would not stand. Across the hall, Silas stood at the window, watching lamplight move along the drive. He felt no triumph, only release. When he turned, Eliza stood in the doorway. "I came to tell you," she said softly, "that I will leave if you ask it." He crossed the room at once. "I will never ask that." They stood close, closer than before, but still untouched. "Then," she said quietly, "tell me what happens next." Silas held her gaze. "Next," he said, "we choose. Openly." The words settled between them. Outside, Ashbourne Hall stood steady. The lie had fallen. The house had chosen its truth. And love, no longer forbidden, but not yet claimed, waited, patient and certain. Ashbourne Hall did not celebrate the change. It absorbed it. The servants resumed ordinary speech. Doors opened without hesitation. The house returned to its proper shape, not bent around fear or performance, but steadied by truth. Honoria remained upstairs. She was not cast out. She was not humiliated publicly. Her confinement was dignified, supervised, unavoidable. Lady Wickham departed within days, her anger sharp but useless now. London would speak eventually, but Ashbourne Hall no longer listened. Silas stood in the study when the final papers arrived. The solicitor's hand was precise, the language careful, the conclusion unmistakable. The marriage was void, not ended, undone. He set the documents aside and did not move for a long moment. There was no triumph in him, only a strange stillness, as though a weight he had carried so long he no longer noticed it had finally been set down. When he looked up, Eliza stood in the doorway. She had not knocked. "You are free," she said quietly. "Yes." The word sounded unfamiliar. He tested it once more in his mind. then looked at her fully. "And you?" he asked. Eliza's hands folded at her waist, not out of fear, but habit. "I will leave, if you wish it. I never intended to remain beyond necessity." Silas crossed the room at once. "No," he said, "I would like you to stay. Not as obligation, not as gratitude." Her breath caught. "But only if you choose it," he finished. She searched his face. Not for desire, not for relief, but for certainty, for steadiness, for the man she had watched choose truth again and again, even when it cost him. "I choose to stay," she said. The words did not tremble. They stood close, closer than ever before, but still did not touch. "May I?" Silas asked softly. This time the question needed no explanation. Eliza nodded. He took her hand, not reverently, not urgently, simply, securely. She exhaled, the sound barely audible, as though something in her had finally been permitted to rest. "I will not rush this," he said. "You deserve time. Safety." She smiled. Small, genuine. "So do you." They walked together that afternoon through the gardens, side by side. Not hidden, not declared, just visible. The staff noticed. They always did. And for the first time, their noticing carried no tension. That evening, Silas dined alone, and then did not. Eliza joined him, not formally, not as a statement, but as a woman invited to share a table. They spoke of small things, weather, letters, the roses near the south wall. It was the most intimate conversation either had known in years. Days passed, then weeks. London spoke, but quietly, with interest, not outrage. A duke freed from deception, a marriage dissolved with dignity, a household reordered. Eliza's presence shifted naturally. She moved from attendant to equal without announcement. She oversaw correspondence, managed the household with calm authority. She belonged, not by title, but by truth. One evening, as autumn settled fully over the estate, Silas found her in the garden at dusk. "You favor this hour," he said. She smiled. "It no longer frightens me." He took her hand again, easily now, without hesitation. "I have something to ask you," he said. Her heart stilled. "I will not offer you a title," he continued. "Not as leverage, not as reward. I offer you a life, steady, visible, chosen daily." She met his gaze, eyes bright. "I would accept nothing else." He smiled then, openly, without restraint. And this time, when he kissed her, it was not cautious. It was not urgent. It was right. They stood there as the light faded, Ashbourne Hall glowing behind them, not as a monument to duty, but as a home restored. Inside, the past was contained. Outside, the future waited. And for the first time since he had inherited the title, Silas Vane felt neither trapped nor burdened by it. Because love, when chosen freely, did not cage him. It steadied him. Eliza rested her head briefly against his shoulder. "This," she said softly, "will be enough." "Yes," he replied, "always." And Ashbourne Hall, patient, enduring, held them both. Ashbourne Hall did not announce the wedding. It simply changed. The staff noticed it first. The way the Duke smiled more easily, the way Miss Fairleigh's presence no longer required explanation. By spring, she was no longer Miss Fairleigh at all, but Lady Ashbourne, not by force of title, but by unmistakable belonging. They married quietly. No grand procession, no society crush, no need to prove anything to London. Only a small gathering in the estate chapel, sunlight warming the stone, vows spoken without witnesses who needed convincing. Those who attended remarked later that it felt less like a beginning and more like a recognition, as though something long settled had finally been named. Silas wore no expression of triumph that day, only peace. Eliza stood beside him without nerves, without fear, her hand steady in his. She did not look like a woman rescued, nor he like a man rewarded. They looked like equals who had chosen each other with open eyes. Honoria remained abroad. She was spoken of rarely. Truth had required no cruelty, only distance. By autumn, Ashbourne Hall had become what it had always meant to be, a place of order, warmth, and quiet strength. Laughter returned. The garden bloomed without scrutiny. Letters were written without secrecy. And in the evenings, when the lamps were lit and the world slowed, the Duke and Duchess walked the grounds together, not as symbols, not as survivors of scandal, but as two people who had refused to build love on anything but truth. That, in the end, was what endured.
So that's the crux of the matter.
You stood beside me saying nothing, while the room pretended not to see. Every truth was held in stillness, every wound learned how to breathe. Silent eyes still awake, holding more than words could say. What was seen but never named stayed and waited anyway. I learned how to lower my gaze so the world would stay polite. I carried love without a sound, like a candle hid from light. Silent eyes turned away, guarding truths we couldn't face. What was known but left untouched waited, patient in its place. I mistook restraint for mercy and distance for something kind. I saw you watching from the edge and called my silence right. Silent eyes heavy with truth, knowing more than I could prove. What was clear but never claimed stayed faithful through the bruise. They say love must speak in fire, must arrive with fearless sound. But ours lived in quiet rooms where courage learned to bow. Silent eyes, steady still, seeing more than force or will, what we dared not yet believe. Waited, soft until it could be real. I watched you choose integrity over ease, over escape. You carried truth without demand and let time decide its shape. Silent eyes open wide, holding pain without reply. What was earned, not taken fast, stayed honest through the night. If loving meant not reaching first, I learned how not to move. If seeing meant I'd lose control, I learned how to choose truth. What we saw we did not steal. We waited until it could be real. I stayed where nothing asked my heart. I broke where silence hid my fear. The world looked on and called it calm, but every